This is CBN Newswatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. Aid agencies today warned of a growing humanitarian crisis in Northeast Syria after Turkey's invasion. 450,000 civilians live along the border. Meanwhile, President Trump has warned Turkey to keep captured ISIS fighters in Syria. Dale Hurd has the story.
Turkey continues to push into Syria with attacks from the air and ground. Turkey's foreign minister says Turkish troops intend to move some 19 miles deep into northern Syria and that its operation will last until all, quote, terrorists are neutralized, a reference to Syrian Kurdish fighters. Civilians are fleeing, including mothers with small babies, taking their belongings and loading them into the backs of pickup trucks to escape Turkish forces. The Kurds, who for years fought alongside American troops in the battle against ISIS, reported multiple civilian casualties and at least 5 deaths. One Kurdish leader told an ABC News reporter America has let the Kurds down.
We were speaking earlier to a Kurdish intelligence official, and he kept asking, why has America betrayed its friend in the region, saying that nobody in the Middle East would now believe America's word.
10,000 ISIS fighters held captive and guarded by Kurdish fighters are at risk of being freed. And there are reports some prison guards have already left their posts to join the fight against Turkey. Turkey claims mortar fire from Syria has killed some of its civilians. And Turkish President Erdogan today threatened to release 3.6 million Syrian refugees into Europe if any EU members call the operation an invasion. President Trump distanced himself from the invasion made possible by his agreeing to pull U.S. troops back from Kurdish areas, calling the operation a bad idea. But when pressed about the potential danger if those ISIS prisoners escape, he appeared unconcerned.
Well, they're going to be escaping to Europe. That's where they want to go. They want to go back to their homes.
Yet as the Turks move into Syria, the U.S. has moved some of the highest-ranking ISIS members into its own custody. And Trump threatened retaliation if Turkey wipes out the Kurds.
I will wipe out his economy if that happens.
Iran today called on Turkey to stop its invasion. And in Congress, there's a bipartisan push for harsh sanctions against Turkey. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Chief International Correspondent Gary Lane has been in contact with Kurds in the region today and joins us now. Bring us up to date. What's the latest and what are you hearing from Kurds on the ground?
Well, there are 2 main areas that have been operations of struggle today, battle. The Turks attacked Kobani, which, Wendy, is a town that I visited a couple of years ago, right over the Turkish border in the northern area of Syria, north-central area. And 99% of the people are gone now in Kobani. That was a base of operation for the YPG, and the Turkish forces went after them. Also, further to the east is a town called Tel Abyad. And Tel Abyad is about 15 villages around that area came under attack as well. That was another base of operation for the YPG. And that's who Turkey's going after right now. There have been some reports there were bombings in Kamishli, which is the capital of northeastern Syria, the capital of Kurdistan up there, Syrian Kurdistan. And then also some reports of struggle with Syrian defense forces, and those are the ones that we fought alongside with.
Well, Gary, we're already seeing images of people, of Kurds being injured on TV.
Yes.
We're hearing reports that ISIS members may be released from prisons. What is President Trump thinking?
Well, President Trump is thinking he's keeping a campaign promise. He said that he would get America out of all foreign wars, and that's why he's withdrawn the troops there. But what happens when there's a vacuum created, then other forces come in. He didn't want to see the Iranians come in, so he said, look, we can trust the Turks more than the Iranians because they're a member of NATO. And I think, Wendy, he feels like he has more leverage over Turkey if they misbehave. And he's already said if they do, economic sanctions are coming your way.
Well, what do most Americans not know about the Kurds?
Well, Americans think that the Kurds are this great cohesive group, but they are not. There are many groups involved, and the PKK, this is the group of Kurds that the Turks are targeting right now. The PKK is a communist group. It has been labeled a terrorist organization, not only by Turkey, but also by NATO and the United States. President Trump would be good to explain that to the Americans. The YPG is the military fighting force the militia of the PKK, and they're not friends of the United States.
So these are not the Kurds that fought alongside our soldiers?
Some of them did. I mean, when I was in Kobani, the YPG protected us from ISIS because ISIS was still operating in that area when we were there.
Wow.
But for the most part, I would say no, the SDF, Syrian Democratic Forces, are primarily the ones we have supported over the years.
What is likely to happen now?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I think if Turkey goes too far, they start attacking the SDF and civilians in Kurdistan, in the Kurdish area of northern Syria, then Trump is going to respond with economic sanctions. Maybe he should send in some NATO troops there to help protect the people. Get some NATO countries in there and help protect them alongside of NATO member Turkey. Then Turkey would not be able to do everything they want to do.
Well, he's really out on a limb by himself right now. So
yes, he is. Not many people are with him on this.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Great reporting. Thanks so much, Gary. Well, the United States ambassador to Germany says 10 Americans were inside a synagogue where a gunman attempted an attack. It happened in the eastern city of Halle. The ambassador tweeted, "They're all safe and unharmed." A heavily armed assailant shot at the door of the synagogue as 70 to 80 people inside were observing Yom Kippur, Judaism's holiest day.
He wanted to throw what looked like a hand grenade or a firecracker, but it bounced off the door frame and exploded.
Witnesses and German authorities say the gunman then killed 2 people while firing outside the building and into a nearby shop. Planned Parenthood plans to launch a $45 million campaign to defeat President Donald Trump in 2020. The Hill reports a large-scale grassroots effort that includes all forms of media. It also includes massive canvassing of voters and will target Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Kelly Robinson of Planned Parenthood Votes told The Hill the stakes are higher than ever. She says we're coming out more powerfully than ever with the largest investment we've ever made. She says the campaign will focus on telling people there is a coordinated attack by Republicans to overturn the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade ruling that legalized abortion. Well, a powerful blizzard is threatening a big part of the central U.S., bringing some cold temperatures with it. A nor'easter is taking aim at the eastern seaboard. Meanwhile, in California, the fear of wind-fueled wildfires has sparked precautionary power outages. Electricity was cut to customers in the Bay Area overnight. It's the second wave of planned outages affecting nearly 2 million people statewide.
At this point, we believe that it's definitely a necessary step to take for the safety of our communities.
So whether it's a flashlight, shovel, or umbrella, get ready for some crazy weather. Still ahead, we're heading to Washington, D.C. for analysis on the new Supreme Court term. Stay tuned.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
You need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Here, we're committed to a heritage of rigorous scholarship dating back over 1,000 years.
And to a faith tradition dating back 1,000 more.
This is how we create a culture of inquiry where no topic is off limits.
And a culture of hope.
Hey!
It's Christian leadership.
And it's changing the world for the better.
It's higher learning.
It's greater knowing.
It's what makes us whole.
It's what makes us Regent.
President Trump is calling on the Supreme Court to overturn Daca. The president says the Obama-era immigration program should never have happened and that the High Court should not let it stand. Daca is just one of the issues, social issues, the justices are considering this term. The court is set to hear arguments that could affect the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision legalizing abortion. Another case involves whether laws against sex discrimination prevent employers from firing gay or transgender workers. Also on the firing line, a case that could lead to an expansion of Second Amendment rights and the issue of the separation of church and state. Our Faith Nation team sat down with Thomas Jipping, a deputy director and senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, to discuss the new term.
The Supreme Court has already addressed the issue that's involved with this particular state law, and that is a law that requires that abortion facilities have connections or relationships with hospitals. It's a pretty specific kind of regulation, and so I don't think it's one that will raise the broad issue of whether the Constitution protects the right to abortion. But there are many other kinds of regulations and restrictions being enacted, and perhaps one of those may have that potential.
Another case looks at whether the Civil Rights Act protects transgender and gay people from discrimination on the basis of sex. People opposing the expansion say that they're concerned that the law, changing the law, would have unintended consequences. Your thoughts there?
Well, I don't think that's the biggest issue. The issue in those three cases, two involving a gay employee and one involving a transgender employee, the real issue there really doesn't have anything to do with sexual orientation or gender identity. It has to do with whether, when judges interpret statutes, are they free to give those statutes new meaning, or do they have to stick with what Congress intended those statutes to mean when Congress passed them? When Congress enacted the Civil Rights Act in 1964, there is no way that they had sexual orientation and gender identity in mind when they prohibited sex discrimination. That's the only issue that really a judge ought to concern himself with, and that's the kind of standard that ought to be applied across the board, no matter what a statute is about.
On the gun issue, it's going to come up before the court for the first time since 2008. Excuse me. What do you expect to happen there?
Well, that's a challenge to a very restrictive gun law in New York City that prohibited essentially taking guns outside of the city for any purpose, whether it even to a gun range, to practice shooting. The city has repealed that ordinance, and so one thing to watch is will the court still jump in and decide the underlying substantive issue, or will they say, since that law and really is no longer on the books, we're going to take a pass? But it is a very restrictive law. The Supreme Court has said the Second Amendment protects an individual right to keep and bear arms. So if they do tackle that issue, I think it's very likely that they'll strike it down.
Real quickly here, how much do you think the makeup of the court will affect some of these decisions that we're expecting?
Well, when I think of the makeup of the court, I think of how many justices take the traditional view of what a court is supposed to do in deciding cases. Do they take the law as it is, as it's written, or do they think that they can make the law into whatever they want it to be? And I believe there's a majority of justices to take that traditional approach.
All right, Thomas Jipping with Heritage. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see how one group is training Gen Z to stand up for the faith.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com. Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new My CBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Are we living in a post-Christian America? The numbers show that young Americans know little about God or the Bible, and even some next-gen Christian leaders are walking away from God. But as Paul Strand reports, many teens are thirsty for spiritual answers, and they're waiting for someone to teach them the truth.
About 100 people recently gathered at North Carolina's Camp Cale to strengthen the future of Christianity by making sure these teenagers know how to stand up for the facts of their faith.
It's an interesting time in America. Some are calling it a post-Christian America, which might lead you to think, well, then why teach young people about how to defend the Christian faith?
So that the gospel can continue to go on.
American Family Radio's Miki and Will Addison say keeping Christianity alive and well in the U.S. can feel like an uphill battle.
There's almost this loss of hope. They say that this is the least religious generation in the history of the United States of America.
We feel like, man, before they even leave the house, a lot of times they're already gone.
Still, Miki insists there's no reason to surrender Generation Z.
I often go, wait a minute, Gen Zers, these people are still eating at your table. You haven't lost them yet.
Youth are spiritually hungry. I mean, they really, really are.
Alex McFarland of Truth for a New Generation leads these annual camps because he insists teenagers are desperate for answers.
Does truth exist? Does God exist? How can we know God exists? What about the Bible? Is the Bible true and trustworthy? What about Jesus?
Despite the culture's message that there are many paths to God and everyone has their own truth, McFarland says these kids aren't buying it.
In spite of decades of relativism really being pumped into the culture at so many levels, young people seem to intuitively know that there are some things true, there are some things false.
Daniel Ritchie, author of My Affliction for His Glory.
I think kids really feel like they're almost being encroached and attacked from every single direction, and I think they're trying to find a way to navigate that.
Even in their schools, you'll see where they have teachers, you know, in colleges, universities that are against what we believe, and they will be really bold about it. And I think our kids have to be equipped to withstand that, you know, and not crumble under it.
Especially in a public school, people around you aren't always the most Christian-like.
That's why Grayson Harmon came to camp for a second year, to become grounded in the truth that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
He's the only way to heaven, and not just the good works we do gets us into heaven.
Versus the pantheon of all these other false gods, he's the only one that stepped into our mess and remedied it by his grace.
Ritchie comes to show teenagers that with God in their life, no amount of resistance, trials, or tribulations has to knock them off their feet.
My suffering in terms of being born without arms is just, it's a lifetime sentence. I know what it is to feel like life's not fair, but then to know that God in his grace is better than the infirmities and the insecurities and the sufferings that I have to face.
So he's anxious to share at camps like this one.
To give kids the opportunities to see that their hardship is a remarkable opportunity for them to share the gospel is something that I think students need to see.
Since young minds and hearts get filled with something, Miki says to fill them with what's actually true.
We are indoctrinating our kids. And when I say that, people go, well, isn't that bad? And I go, well, it depends on the type of doctrine that they're getting.
McFarland says the kids want the truth even if it's not popular with the culture.
Kids thank us. Middle schoolers thank us for not sugarcoating and being very straight.
He just counseled a young lady in a tough situation who really needed hard truth.
She looked at me and she said, look, don't sugarcoat it.
McFarland asked her why.
She said, because I know so often adults tell us what they think we want to hear. Please tell me the truth. And all around her 6 little heads were nodding in agreement.
They are bold. They are courageous. They just need to be armed with the truth. They want to be a light in darkness, but we need to make sure that we pass on that light to them.
The message from this apologetics camp: don't give up on America. Don't give up on this generation. Many of them may be biblically illiterate, but when they hear the truth, they embrace it. And so there is hope. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Camp Cale, North Carolina.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News.
Ferocious warrior, dismantle your enemy and rise. It's the work of Cora Jakes Coleman. She's the daughter of Bishop T.D. Jakes, but also a preacher in her own right. Ephraim Graham sits down with the author, wife, and mother in Studio 5.
Before you move, before you speak, before you use the gift that God has given you, consider where you are.
Away from the pulpit, Cora Jakes Coleman is a busy wife and mother of 2.
There is a ferocious warrior in all of us. We are created by the battles that we face.
Her latest project and second book is Ferocious Warrior.
And I have to say, reading it and learning the behind the scenes of your life, all I could say was, nothing came easy.
No, I wish it did, but it didn't. Yes, sir.
I would say that people watching from the outside would say, Bishop T.D. Jakes' daughter, we see Bishop, we see your mom, oh, what a perfect life. But when you say warrior, this is not just warrior reading, this is warrior living. What do you mean by being a ferocious warrior?
I believe that being a ferocious warrior is so much bigger than just me, myself, but I think it's really just about taking responsibility in the fights of life and going after them full force and not allowing your situations to suppress your circumstance, but allowing that to fuel you. My father has always taught us to let fear fuel us. Don't let it stop us, but allow that fear to fuel you to forward.
To push forward. If we could talk about just the one line I've heard you say that I like, but it could be confusing to some people. The beauty of your battle is birthed in a barren
Yes.
place. Why is that beautiful?
Well, because that's what I learned. When I got diagnosed with infertility, PCOS, that leads to infertility, I was placed in a barren place. And so I had to learn how to find beautiful things in the barren place. So it taught me so many beautiful things can be brought out if you're willing to look at the bones and speak into them. And so I learned that my battles and the beauty of my battles came from my ability to embrace the barren place and turn it into a beautiful situation.
If we could talk about some of the battles, because I believe so many people will relate to them, and they may be living through these in a dark place themselves, afraid to even talk about it. But you're a preacher's kid.
Yes.
You talk about being suicidal.
Yes, sir.
Literally, and attempted suicide a few times.
Yes, sir.
How do you get there?
Depression and lack of confidence. To be honest with you, I didn't believe enough in myself or enough in God at the time to believe that I was of value beyond what I was going through. And it's so interesting because the second time that I tried to attempt suicide, my sister caught me because I wrote her a letter. And she came into my room and she said, "You don't want to kill yourself because people who want to kill themselves don't write letters, they just do it." And so she was like, called me on my whole drama queen situation, and she's like, "We're not gonna do this. Like, you have something to live for." And so I had to get out of that place of feeling like I wasn't normal enough for people to love me, for people to like me, but then to also begin to start loving on myself and trying to figure out what that looked like.
One thing I hear you say that I love is that you can't just read the word and hear the word. You've got to actually do the word, and that's a place you graduated to.
Yes, absolutely. It had to be more than just the PK, listening to your dad preach, and like you kind of take those words home and you know the sermon, but it was about like really doing what the word said and then believing what it said about me gave me such a power that it threatened the enemy.
What was it about your dad? You mentioned him being a minister, and I know that there are two things you said in life that you wanted to be, a mom and a preacher. How do you look at Dad and say, "I want to do what he does"? What did he do?
I don't think I looked at quantity. I looked at quality. He was relentless and he is relentless and ferocious. And as a little girl, I would see him casting demons out and delivering people, and everybody else was super scared. But I found it interesting. I felt a draw and a pull to it, and I wanted demons to be afraid of me like that. I wanted the devil to be afraid of me like that, and it just seemed like the devil was really frightened of my father, so I made a goal to want to be a preacher just like him, if only just to threaten the enemy.
Love it. So inspiring. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. We hope you'll join us next time. From all of us here, God bless you, goodbye, and again, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.